All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Mint Collective podcast. Today, our guest is none other than Drake McGruder. Drake is what I would call a passionate, serious, and advanced collector, someone I've known for a few years now. Drake, welcome to the Mint Collective podcast. How are you doing today?
Jeremy, I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to talk about the Mint Collective and the hobby in general.
Well, let's do that. And I want to talk about the Mint Collective with you because we've got some cool stuff to talk about there. But I want the audience to get to know you a little bit first. And really, I introduced you as a passionate, serious, advanced collector. What made you a collector?
Yeah, so the things that made me a collector is, first of all, I'm a big sports fan. And so, whether it's cards or memorabilia or wrestling action figures when I was a kid, that stuff all connected me to the sport. And so the ability to get that stuff and kind of have that, and whether it was a memorabilia card or an autograph or a card that took me back to that moment of when someone like a Peyton Manning was performing or something like that, just having those pieces to take me back, right, was what really made me a collector per se. It wasn't about values of things or anything like that. I love looking at things, and they kind of take me back to that moment of time, when the athlete was playing or when I was a kid or something like that. So.
Yeah, I think that's what it is for a lot of us. It's that nostalgic piece where we look at our collection. It might remind us of opening up cards when we were younger, or just of watching a particular sporting event. Makes me think of the Super Bowl, not the one that we just had a couple of weeks ago, but the year before, where we had Matt Stafford against Joe Burrow. And I had managed to pick up each of their rookie card like a week or two leading up. And I actually had those cards in my hands as I watched the Super Bowl. Have you ever, you talk about being more connected to, say, your favorite athlete, your favorite team? Is that a part of your hobby experience where you want to own cards maybe and enjoy them even while you're taking in an event? Or is that just something I did?
Well, that's certainly a part of it. Friends of mine that are in the hobby will joke sometimes that I'm like the retirement home, someone who collects people in the retirement home, because I collect Peyton Manning and Drew Brees primarily. Right. And so, with Peyton, he retired and I had plenty of his cards. And then before I got back into the hobby in 2019, of course, he was long since retired, but Drew Brees was still playing. And so it was great for me to kind of pick up the Drew Brees cards and look at stuff when he's playing the games, and then kind of pull those cards out and then see those ones, and especially certain sets that would take you back to moments like when they won the Super Bowl, or when he had the passing record and like that sort of thing. And then primarily today with wrestling cards and things like that, it's so fun, when someone comes back like The Rock, and you can kind of pull out your Rock cards and it brings you back. And right now I'm a big fan and I'm a collector of Roman Reigns, and he's over 900 days as champion, and it's really cool to look at that collection and see things that are out, and just the cards kind of, they show those moments, and you're seeing that kind of happen live on TV. So I'd say you're not alone, Jeremy.
You mentioned Peyton Manning, Drew Brees. Obviously, they're football players. Football cards being, in my perspective, one of the four major sports of which there are cards: basketball, baseball, football, and hockey. But you're also a big fan of wrestling cards, and wrestling, the sport or the entertainment. What have you seen happen over the past couple of years when it comes to wrestling cards? Because it seems to me like, and maybe it's just the accounts I follow on Instagram, including yours at Drakes_PC, where I'm seeing a lot more activity and interest in wrestling cards. So the question I have for you is, like I mentioned, what have you seen over the last couple of years? But maybe more specifically, are you noticing that more and more lifelong wrestling fans are discovering cards for the first time over the last couple of years, and that's why I am seeing this proliferation of activity?
Yeah, so I think that's it. So if you think about it, and I'll kind of take things back. So when I was growing up in the Memphis area, Memphis was a hotbed of professional wrestling, but the card shops around there did not have wrestling cards. That wasn't part of their spectrum of what they carried, and so that to me just wasn't a part of the hobby at the time, even though wrestling cards were around way back then. And so, as a wrestling fan, if you wanted to collect stuff, you collected signed wrestling boots or signed photos or something like that. And then when I returned to the hobby back in 2019, I still didn't really know about wrestling cards. And then in 2020, I heard David Peck talk about the 1982 Wrestling All-Star set. And I kind of looked up and I was like, man, this set is pretty cool. And there's wrestling cards that are out there. And so I grabbed a few of those and liked those a lot and all that. And then a little while later, someone who was getting back in and collecting and, huge fan of like the finest gold refractors and golds and, and different things like that. I learned that there was like a 2014 Topps Chrome wrestling set. And I got into that and I'm like, man, you can get a chrome gold refractor of The Rock and, Hulk Hogan and Roman Reigns and all these, The Undertaker and Brock Lesnar. And at the time they were from a cost standpoint that they were pretty cheap. Right. And so it was great to kind of use that shotgun approach and pick up all these gold refractors and, stuff that people didn't really know about at the time. And so it was great to add those pieces to my collection. And it's of cards that I like and love that were in some of the other sports. And I think we've seen more and more people kind of gravitate to that. And, it seems like almost every week I talk to somebody that has just discovered wrestling cards for the first time and they get in. And whether it's the older stuff or the more modern stuff or whatever, I think there's something for everybody and there's something at all the different price points. And when you look at wrestling cards as a whole, even the top tier cards are not millions of dollars, right? They're in the lower five figures and that whole sort of thing. And so I think, it's kind of a niche part of the hobby, but I think you're seeing more and more people kind of gravitate to that. And once they learn about that cards are out there and there are wrestling cards and there are things beyond just memorabilia, they're really jumping in and they're finding that, hey, there's something for everybody. And there's some really neat cards that are out there. So.
Well said. A couple things stick out to me there from your answer. The first one is, now to the audience, if you're watching this, I want you to, I hope you notice the passion with which Drake just talked when he answered the question, because I was watching you, Drake, and you were excited to answer the question and talk about these cards. If you're listening, you may not have seen it, but hopefully you could hear it. You also mentioned that, with the top tier wrestling cards, there's no $1 million cards, but there's, in the five figures. That's still a lot of money for a card. Can you give us your best reason for why a wrestling card can be worth five figures? I know it's a bit of a abstract type of question, but why are we as collectors putting so much money into pieces of cardboard?
Yeah, I think when you look at it, that all cards tell a story and some tell different stories, right? So let's just take the 1982 Wrestling All-Star set. It's a great set. It's kind of like the 1986 Fleer in basketball. And then some other sets, that would come to mind, maybe 61 Fleer in basketball. There's so many big names in the set. And for a lot, there's just a story behind, hey, this set came in a cellophane pack that people could mail in. I think it was like $5. And there were certain orders that the cards were put into that stack. And depending on where they were in that cellophane pack, that affected the condition of the card. And so when you look at across grades and stuff like that, take the 1982 Hulk Hogan, there's 0 gem mint copies of that, right? There's some BGS 9.5s and stuff like that. But from folks who know a lot more than I do, supposedly the BGS 9.5s would probably not cross to PSA 10. And so, when you look at it, hey, there were probably less than 2,000 sets produced there. There's a history behind it, history behind the photo, just some cool looking cards from like a vintage standpoint. I think that's what creates the mass appeal and would cause someone, for a high grade copy of which there are very few. I think there's under 20 PSA 9s, right, on a card that's, 41 years old. Just not that many, and it's not something that's growing. And then you get into the more modern stuff, right? And you start getting into your Topps Chrome superfractors and your Transcendent superfractors and things like that. And you start getting into the one of ones and the rare and scarce stuff. And there's just certain cards that are on my wish list even that just don't come around very often, and you can't find them. And so I think once you get into that manufactured rarity combined with the scarcity of either they're not available either at all, or they're not available in high grades, I think that whole supply and demand is what causes that the prices that you see on some of those wrestling cards.
Yeah, makes sense. If I just add on a little bit to that, I think it also has to do with the fact that, I think as humans we have a collecting gene in us. I think it's dormant in a lot of people, and in others like me and you, it's very, very active. And I think we also like things as human nature. I think we like to own things that other people can't, and maybe that's why we like to have the rare pieces, and why we chase cards so hard, and we search all four corners of the earth to find them at times. And one of those four corners of the earth are going to be the Mint Collective coming up, and especially the marketplace. And I say especially because that will be where vendors and card dealers are set up selling cards, and maybe we'll be able to find a very nice, rare, scarce piece for our collection, and we'll be able to, persuade the seller to sell it to us, because we're going to give them enough money to where we can be one of the few owners. You mentioned a whole bunch of cards that you love, whether it's a superfractor, which is usually a 1 of 1. It's just a type of card. A gold refractor, often out of 10 or out of 50. I think it might depend. Those are small numbers. Not everyone can own these cards. And, my question of why are we spending so much money on these cards? I think it's those reasons I mentioned. We're collectors. We like scarce things. We want to be able to share our passion, and it's nostalgia. It takes us back to when we were younger, watching Hulk Hogan in the 80s. I know I did. And that all those related things. So that's what I love about our hobby. I also love our community, and I love the events. And I'm going to tie this in. This is the Mint Collective podcast, so you're going to notice how I thread that together there. The Mint Collective, last year was the first time it occurred. Were you there last year, Drake?
No, Jeremy. So had planned to when it was originally scheduled for January, but when it had to be postponed until March, we had spring break plans that week, so I was not able to attend last year. But looking forward to it this year.
And so that's actually good, because I want to ask you then, this is, you didn't go. You were planning to go. You didn't. You were disappointed when it got rescheduled, I'm sure, because you weren't going to be able to make it. When it was over, and your friends in the hobby who came back from it and talked about it, did what you heard make you wish that you could have been there too?
Oh, Jeremy, the FOMO was at like maximum level from it. It was just there was so much content around the event last year that it was hard not to have like major FOMO, whether it was from, like the kickoff events where folks are hanging out at the bar and, just hanging out with all the celebrities and folks in sports and different people in the hobby and that sort of thing. And then you fast forward and you're seeing the different sessions that are going on. And, me as like a Peyton Manning collector, seeing him on stage and, with Josh Luber and some of those, some of the other guys, and just talking about the hobby and all that. I mean, that just really got me right in the feels. And so the FOMO was extremely high.
Yeah. I was there, so you're not wrong to have sort of, regretted missing out, but you're coming this year, so you get another chance to come. And with that, what are you most looking forward to doing at the event this year?
So whether it's the Mint or, whether it's a card show or whatever the case may be, the thing I most look forward to about events like these are really just the interaction with everybody, interaction with folks in the hobby, whether it's, hey, you're hanging out at a social event, or, hey, maybe you're making a transaction, getting that personal touch, or maybe, you're learning more about the hobby. That's really what makes it complete for me. It's far more than just buying and selling cards or buying and selling memorabilia. I often talk that the transactional part of the hobby is my least favorite part of the hobby. I know it's a necessary evil, right? Because that's how you buy, sell, trade, or whatever. But the biggest part for me is just getting to spend time with people, getting to learn from people who've been in the hobby longer than I have, and just grow as a person, and meet new people, learn new things. That's what I'm most looking forward to this year.
What about, so last year at the event, there were panel discussions, some sort of in breakout rooms, and people attended them. And there was, the ones I attended were great. The ones I got to actually participate in were a lot of fun, and they were going on concurrent with the marketplace. This year, they are broken out into Friday, and the marketplace is Saturday and Sunday. So with that kind of, I think that opens up the opportunity for an attendee like yourself to take in these breakouts, but they're not just going to be panels this year. They're going to be interactive workshops. So I'm aware we've got the hobby shop workshop and the grading school workshop. Are these workshops that you're going to attend? Are you going to be there on the Friday and attending these? And if so, are you looking forward to them?
Yes. So planning to get in actually Wednesday night so I can take in as much as I can that week. Right. But I am looking forward to those workshops. And you mentioned it, the grading school. I think the grading school is one that I'm really looking forward to, because it's always one of those things. It seems like it's behind the curtain, and you can read in the different magazines, and they tell you, why cards would get a certain grade and so on and so forth. But really to hear that firsthand from a grader, as far as here's what I'm looking for, and kind of, when they point out certain things on a card, for example, and then just hearing more about the markets and the way that they are evolving. Just hearing that type of workshop, just as I mentioned previously, the educational aspect of it is so big for me. I'm someone who's always just craving more knowledge and just wanting to learn as much as I can, so that I can, be the best participant in the hobby that I can be.
Oh, that's just a great way to be in the hobby. I respect that a lot. I'm looking at the Mint Collective this year as being an elevated hobby experience. And what I mean by that is, even you mentioned before, whether it's the Mint or any other card show or event that has a card show, you like meeting, interacting with the people, and just the camaraderie of it all. I love all that as well. I do think that Mint Collective this year is going to be one of these elevated experiences, in that, and again, I had the luxury of being there last year, so I knew what it was last year, and it didn't feel like a card show to me, yet there was a card show. And I even like how Mint is calling it a marketplace. They're not even calling it I don't know any other card show that calls itself a marketplace. I like that that's what the Mint Collective is doing. It makes it just brands it differently, but I can tell you that the feel matches that different branding. At least it did last year, and I would assume it's going to again this year. And I'm glad that we have the Mint Collective doing an event like this, because the knowledge aspect of it, the ability to maybe not really to open ourselves up to other ways of thinking by sitting in on these workshops. Listen, I don't know what to expect from the workshop exactly. I'm more used to a panel discussion where you're just in the audience. So if these are more interactive, I'm excited by that, by the prospect of what is that going to look like, and how are people going to be able to take part in them. So I'm excited that we're having an event that's like that. I've been told by the people at Mint that it's not so much a B2B event. It's not meant to be such a B2B event. It's meant to be something where there's something for everybody. It's in Las Vegas. I mean, you're going in when you said I'm coming on Wednesday, I thought, well, that's an extra day in Vegas. That can be. What do you think about it being in Vegas? How do you like that as a destination for the Mint Collective?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great spot, because just as you mentioned, that with the event itself being something for everyone, I think Las Vegas has something for everybody, right? So you can go there, and whatever your cup of tea is, I think Vegas probably has it. So I think it's a great venue for the event.
Yeah, same here. I love going to Vegas, first of all, and I believe that the marketplace is meant this year. It's going to be bigger than last year, so that's something that you won't have that comparison. But for anyone who was there last year, there's going to be more square footage, so there's going to be more dealers. It's going to be more transactional, which is not Drake's favorite part of the hobby, but it isn't necessarily evil if you want to buy or sell or acquire or trade cards. So that I think is definitely something to look forward to. I'm excited to see how the floor space is, and I can tell you, Drake, what you're going to see is probably the nicest room, not just room, but carpeting. Carpeting at a card show. People
That's
don't
big.
understand. It's big, right? The impact of carpet at a card show, an event in a marketplace is it's pretty important. You collect Peyton Manning as well as Drew Brees. Peyton Manning is involved in the Mint Collective. How much of a draw is that for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's big. It's one of those things where it's not the only reason that I would go, but it certainly, is a draw for me there. And not just to see them, but it's awesome when you get athletes, whether it's Peyton or someone else, involved in the hobby. And I think they have an appreciation for the hobby. And I think just seeing that, whether they're there in person or in spirit or whatever, just seeing that those people involved in the hobby, I think it just gives validation to what we do, right? And so in many cases, a lot of athletes are collectors themselves. I think you've seen someone like Giannis who collects your own cards, LeBron, and folks like that. And I think just as I mentioned before, that gives the validation. And so I think, you talk about the Mint Collective being an elevated hobby experience. Most card shows will have people come in to sign some autographs and things like that. And, but whenever you're having a show and you're getting someone like a Peyton Manning that's involved with it, and some other athletes, high profile athletes and stuff, I think that it just gives it that, and to steal a term from wrestling, a big match type feel, right? And so I think that just really shows you, like, hey, the Mint Collective is somewhere that you need to be. Like, if you're in the hobby, whether you're a collector, whether you're an investor, a flipper, you have a business, whatever, I think it's got that WrestleMania Super Bowl type feel to the hobby.
Yeah. Oh, that's yeah, I agree. I liked how you said that, even having a person like Peyton Manning or Giannis that are also collecting cards, how it validates what we're doing. I mean, I don't, and listen, you and me, we don't need their validation. I think, but what it does do is it validates it to the rest of of society, other sports fans, and maybe will help grow the hobby, because we've got some influential people who are the subject of a lot of these cards, collecting them themselves. And I think that's a really cool thing, which leads me into my last question, which is regarding the state of the hobby right now. The hobby's been through some times over the last couple of years. We had the big run up during the pandemic, and now in the last year or so, we've seen values, if you will, kind of, normalize a little bit or a lot. And I think that we're in a healthy place right now personally. But from your perspective, Drake, how do you see the state of the hobby like today? And do you have any expectations through, say, the rest of this year?
Yeah, I definitely say the hobby, and I know it's a bit cliche, is in a really healthy spot right now. We saw some wild swings really the last couple of years with card prices fluctuating, people coming in and out, lots of volatility, some things like that. We saw some people kind of backstabbing and trying to jump all over each other and that sort of thing. And I mean, yeah, you still see that today to some extent, but I think the hobby is super healthy right now. And a lot of people who were getting in it solely to make money, I think, became collectors themselves. And so they're kind of finding their sweet spot of like who they want to collect or what they want to collect. And like, yeah, the money aspect of it is still there. I think it's always going to be there. But when you settle in and you're buying cards because you're trading for cards because you truly love that athlete, or you love that sport, or you love that set or whatever, I think that's where you want to be. And like, that's what takes me back to when I was a kid, right? When you're picking up cards and you're going to the local card shop and, you're getting them as presents. You're not concerned about, well, what's this card worth? And, is this card going to go up in value or whatever? You're being like, hey, the reason I want this card is because I have got an attachment to this athlete for whatever reason. And so I think we're seeing more and more of that. And I think we will continue to see more and more of that as we go throughout 2023. We're used to, you could pretty much find any card you wanted whenever you wanted. It may not be the price you wanted to pay or whatever, but I'll tell you now, there's some specific cards that I'm looking for of the players that I collect, and I'm having a tough time finding them. And I think that's a great spot for the hobby to be in. It stinks sometimes as a collector, right? Because you really want to add those cards or whatever. But when you have people that have, as they say, diamond hands holding onto cards, I think that's a good spot to be in.
Oh, I completely agree. I completely agree. You mentioned having attachment to the players or the athletes, and so we want their cards. It's also, and for anyone who might be watching or listening who isn't an advanced collector or maybe a complete novice, it's not just attachment to the player. It's also, are your eyes drawn to the specific card? Because a player like Peyton Manning, who Drake collects, will have thousands and thousands of different cards. So you have a lot of options, and you can really hone in on the ones that you find aesthetically pleasing, that your eye really likes to look at. And I think that's just another piece of what makes us collectors and what drives us in the hobby. Well, Drake, hey man, listen, this has been a lot of fun. You're a true collector, and not to say, there's a lot of discussion on hobby. Are you a collector or an investor? And we don't need to define what we are, but you're a true hobbyist. I think I'll put it that way. You have a true passion for the cardboard, as I do. And it's always fun to have a discussion with someone else who kind of sees the hobby the way I do. And for everyone listening, I want to invite you back to the Sports Cards Live YouTube channel on April the 8th, which is the Saturday after Mint Collective, where Drake, you're going to come join me for a longer, like a long form discussion. And we will debrief the Mint Collective and our experience, and probably remember seeing each other there on April the 8th, Saturday night. So invite everybody to come see that on the Sports Cards Live YouTube channel. Again, April 8th, Drake McGruder will be my guest at Drakes_PC. Make sure you're following Drake on Instagram if you are not yet. And the Mint Collective is March 30th till April 2nd at the MGM Las Vegas. You can get your tickets at themintcollective.com. It's been going on the ticker this whole time. Hope to see you all there. If you are listening, you come and you recognize me or Drake, make sure you say hello and introduce yourselves. We'd love to meet more people and really build out our community, because Drake, I mean, this is being friends with, making friends, building our network in the hobby is one of the wonderful aspects of this hobby. So thank you, Drake, for joining.
Thank you, Jeremy, and I'll see you in Vegas.
Sounds good. We'll see you there. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Have a great rest of the night.